Honestly though, they tend to cost as much or more than a lot of small privately owned restaurants that are leagues ahead in quality. Like Olive Garden is so expensive for what you get. You can go to a real Italian place with house-made pasta and sauce with 8 tables and pay less. Pay less. This is so true. In the Midwest we don't have Italian food, so we settle for Olive Garden sometimes, but restaurants in North End Boston are cheaper and obvs better. We didn't even have a Chinese buffet. We did have a great Chinese restaurant that my family had never gone into because we didn't know what to order. A more worldly friend of my parents took us there and we discovered the joys of chopsticks and all sorts of good food. My parents won $1,500 at a lottery once. They bought a new sofa, to replace a 25-year sofa, a phone, and we went to a mid-range steakhouse, first restaurant for whole family. I was 20, a few years ago. My wife and I were at a nice seafood place for our anniversary. As I was looking at the menu, the table across from us was being served, and a kid who couldn't have been older than 11 had a $50 plate of crab legs put in front of him. First, no chance my parents would have ever taken me to a place like that. Second, no chance my parents would allow me to even look at any section of a menu above $8. No kidding, that's why my parents took us to buffets. There was one we went to for special occasions that was I think $8 per person, all you can eat. And we ate well. Now we thought it was such a luxury to have all those options. When I was a kid, the only restaurants my family took me to were buffets, Souplantation, Hometown Buffet, and Chinese buffets, Denny's, or cheap Vietnamese restaurants in the Little Saigon section of Westminster, California, where a bowl of pho was less than $5 back in the 90s. Until the age of 12, I thought that you weren't allowed to buy things that weren't on sale. My mom only bought things when they were on sale and or she had a coupon, so I thought that the non-sale items weren't being sold. I got treated like shit when I could get shoes ... because I was still poor and could only get knockoff Chucks. People are fuckfaces. Oh well, exact same situation when I was a kid. Knockoff AF1s and everyone knew somehow. Got the piss taken out of. Hey, they're probably worse off than we are today. Yeah. I still remember the cocksuckers being all, those are fake. Look at the stars. They are not like that on real ones. Yours are fake, dude. Look at his fake ass shoes. Ha fucking ha. I called his mom a slut and that about put us in equal shame. Oddly, in my school it became a weird fad who could bring back the worst knockoff from the market. People would come in with all sorts of mad stuff. NYX and Adidas were two of my favorite knock market brands. I didn't envy having name brand things. I did envy other kids who didn't have to feel like they had to keep their feet under the desk or cover them with books or a jacket over their feet. It's that way and worse for a lot of people. It's frustrating to think others have to feel like that. It does sting. Plus I couldn't really talk about it with my parents or family because I didn't want them to feel bad or even care, considering they spent what they could to get them. I feel like being poor made me have more respect for a lot of things I might otherwise dismiss. I got mocked pretty hard for bringing the store brand instant ramen, for being too poor to even afford brand name cup noodles. I feel your pain. After a sleepover at a friend's, her mother gave me a lift home and my friend's younger brother came for the ride. He needed to use the bathroom when we arrived at my place, and when he was finished, mocked me for having plain, home brand toilet paper. He was used to the 3-ply soft stuff with the printed Labradors. For my school's Spirit Week, they had a thrift shop day, where most everyone dressed in old ratty clothes, or the weirdest stuff they could find in a thrift shop. Needless to say, as someone whose clothes were 80% second-hand, it was an eye-opener. I grew up in the US and moved to Norway when I was 12. It was such a shock to go from the US system to the Norwegian, where everybody brought their own lunch anyway. As a Belgian, the whole concept of school lunch has always been odd to me. The only place I ever got lunch at school opposed to bringing my own was at a cooking school. It's funny because in neighboring France it's the opposite, it's all about the canteen. I remember at my school you actually weren't allowed to bring your own lunch. I was always confused by this because through all of my schooling I was on the free lunch program. I assumed everyone who couldn't afford lunches was also on the program. Unfortunately, we made too much money to qualify, but my narcissistic mother spent it on the University of Phoenix instead of feeding or clothing her children. In West Virginia, they made all school breakfast and lunch free for every child. Kids can buy a second lunch if they want, but everyone gets a first lunch free. The food is shitty, but no one goes hungry or gets shamed for being poor. Yeah dude, that's your issue. It's got nothing to do with the government wanting kids to starve. You just had a narcissistic parent. If you went hungry, that's the fault of your mother, not the school district. Restaurants were definitely somewhere at the top of my list. I lived through the tail end of apartheid in South Africa, so we weren't allowed into restaurants. Also, non-iceberg lettuce. Dairy products, like a full glass of milk, cheese, cottage cheese, yogurt, flavored milk. Lawns, brand name cereal? Oh, you mean that stuff you get at school breakfast in those mini containers and you're like, I will treasure this. Back when I was kid, pizza places were not waging the insane price war they're in now. You couldn't get 18 toppings on 25 pizzas for $3.99 like you can now. People talk shit about Domino's cardboard crust, but that sauce had so much sugar in it it was like crack to children. Domino's is shitty pizza. They're not common where I am because we have so many better options. Not necessarily cheaper, but better. I'm appreciative to live in an area with some of the best pizza. It's an exaggeration for comedic effect, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see that deal advertised during the Super Bowl in the next couple of years. Edible products still have to contain a lot of food, but once technology advances a bit farther that'll no longer be a problem. Domino's in the UK is a complete rip-off. One medium pizza costs as much as decent proper meal and you need a second mortgage to order for a family. Domino's was shit back in the day though, not much better than Little Caesars. They had to revamp their menu and are much better now. Certainly for the price it's the best bang for your buck. 2 medium 2 toppings and generous tip is $20. My mom worked at a movie theater / stage / it's complicated and we ended up with like 2 dozen free pizzas somehow, and so we had pizza every day for a week straight. It wasn't until they got wise to our coupons and stopped accepting them that heaven was ruined. My mother used to consider any kind of cereal a luxury. They only had 1 box a month. My mom could somehow only find a way to afford Raisin Bran. I didn't try the fancy ones like Reese Puffs or Fruit Loops until I moved out on my own. My family didn't make too much money when I was younger, so we had pancakes almost every day for 6 people. They definitely are pretty cheap. Eating out was definitely a luxury. Sometimes when Mom couldn't afford food we would have like a week of pancakes with sugar and lemon for dinner. We thought it was the best until I realized it was because we couldn't afford food. That was what I made at least once a week during the beginning of lockdown because we couldn't get much else food-wise besides flour and frozen sausage links. None of the stores around me had them. My kids thought it was the greatest thing ever. I gained about 20 pounds and never want to have pancakes again. Man, I remember when we went what felt like a month without water. Oh my goodness. We were going to the gas station with like 12 Crystal Spring water jugs, filling them up so we would have water to flush the toilets and boil to clean and wash our ass. Psychologically those days really fucked with me. Yes, agreed. I currently live a certain lifestyle that I will not compromise on, because I've lived dirt poor, and I work too fucking hard now to make sure I never have to live like that ever again. I don't live excessively, but if I'm cold, I'm not gonna put on 40 layers, I'm gonna turn the heat on and be comfortable. I hope your life has changed for the better. When I was a baby, my parents had to get hot water from the neighbors since our house didn't have a water heater and they couldn't afford to get one. Those neighbors were saints. I remember being the oldest kid home while my parents worked and being scared when the power company would knock on the door and inevitably shut the power off. I sometimes still have nightmare of how poor we were and getting anxiety that my future with my wife and kids could be like that. I found out that my mom somehow opened up her utility accounts under my name and social when I was a minor and didn't find out until I was 18 with a credit score of 420. Same. We lived in a rundown house in the middle of nowhere. I never want to hear the phrase, "Did we run out of electric money or is this another power cut?" Again. I was very lucky to have a sister with asthma, so the electric company wasn't legally allowed to turn us off. My parents took advantage of that. I'm a hardcore capitalist, but even I pause at how weird it is that one has to have a child with asthma to be legally prevented from cutting a family's power. Like having children without asthma isn't good enough. Getting off the school bus and seeing no lights on in the house, smile. I still can't sleep without white noise because how quiet a house without power is, and it's been 20 years. Best feeling in my life was living alone for the first time and the power went out and I had that knee-jerk "oh shit, did we pay the bill?" in my head, and then remembered, wait, I live alone and I just paid it last week, and I instantly could relax and know it would be coming back soon because it was just a downed line. We had our electricity turned off once/twice/thrice. Being a young teen, I cut the tag on the meter, pulled it out, took off the caps they put on over the studs, and we were rolling. It was an apartment with a bank of them, so I cut all the tags. Never heard anything of it. Paid the bill when we could. Oh, fun memories. My mother wouldn't pay the electric either, so we had a bunch of extension cords leading to an outlet downstairs. We lived in a two-family house. My uncle lived downstairs, but he was also poor and eventually had his electric turned off for a bit, too. I can remember winters where heat was a propane tank with a heating element attachment in the living room. My stepdad ran an auto body shop, so we had a workaround on hand, but not a successful enough one that we were always able to cover lights and heat. My best friend's mom was an alcoholic. She always managed to come home with a case of beer and a pack of cigarettes, but the electricity was off constantly. My aunt had her power turn off often. Thankfully, my dad's an electrician and could sometimes turn it back on temporarily. This one brought back memories. In the middle school that would be a constant thing. Every time it would be cut off I would walk back home and see the inside of where I lived, and every time I didn't see a light I was filled with "Ugh, another day without light, a new winter coat." I don't remember having a new winter coat until I was probably 14 or 15, they had always been hand-me-downs from my cousins. They were usually at least 10 years old by the time I got them, and the stuffing would be all clumped up. My grandma would take me to Chuck E. Cheese on my birthday and give me a bunch of tokens. That shit was Lux, Charles Entertainment Cheese. A poor orphaned rat who never got to celebrate his birthday, so now he has a place where every kid can have a birthday. Is it normal for everyone to have air conditioning where you live? Here in the Netherlands everyone just dies when it's summer because air conditioning is very expensive. It's interesting how this seems to be different in the US. Buying new clothes. The days I justify ordering all kinds of dumb stuff online, but I've always felt a mental block on buying new clothes. It feels like an unjustified luxury because I always got by on second-hand clothes and free t-shirts. Renting a movie from Blockbuster the first weekend of every month. My brother and I got to pick any movie we wanted as long as it wasn't rated R. On really special nights, we even got a 2-liter bottle of Sprite for the family to share, actual real milk. My mum used to buy something called 5 pints. It was powdered milk that you added cold water to and shook to make milk. I remember the lumps of it in my cereal, taking a bath. I mean, we bathed every night, but it was by heating up water that we would go to the park down the road to get in 5-gallon jugs, and filling up a mop bucket to wash off with. Staying over at a friend or family member's house and getting to take an actual shower was amazing though. A hot shower. Cold showers were always available. But when you scraped enough cash to get some diesel fuel and get the burner to kick on long enough to have a hot shower, man, absolutely nothing better.